When we gather to speak of the struggle between the empath and the narcissist, we are not merely speaking of two psychological types who happen to collide in ordinary life. No, we are entering into the mystery of archetypal conflict, into the timeless battle between shadow and light, between the consuming flame of ego and the quiet waters of the soul. The empath and the narcissist are not accidents of personality, they are carriers of symbols. Actors in the great theater of the collective unconscious. To understand their confrontation is to see reflected the drama of the psyche itself, where wholeness struggles against fragmentation and the soul demands liberation from the tyranny of false gods. The empath is one whose psychic channels are open to the collective. She feels not only her own pain, but also the pain of others. And in this sensitivity lies both her wound and her power. The empath often believes herself cursed, unable to shut out the suffering that bleeds into her nervous system. Yet, what she does not immediately realize is that this porousness is an initiation. She is being initiated into the mysteries of compassion, into the archetype of the healer. For the wound she carries is the wound of humanity itself. To be empathic is to suffer the cross of collective pain, to live with antennae tuned to frequencies most dare not hear. The narcissist, by contrast, is not simply vain or arrogant. He is an embodiment of the wounded ego, inflated to godlike proportions. His face, though seemingly radiant with confidence, is but a mask concealing a pit of emptiness. The narcissist does not know who he truly is. He is the hollow man, filled with compulsive need to feed upon the psychic energies of others. He cannot generate his own light, so he steals it, and in his theft, he creates victims who mirror his shadow back to him, though he cannot bear to see it. Thus, he seduces the empath, who, out of her boundless sensitivity, believes she can heal what is broken. She mistakes her calling as healer for a personal mission to repair the narcissist. And so, the ancient dance begins. But why does the narcissist always lose? This is the deeper mystery, for on the surface, it appears he is the victor. He charms, manipulates, dominates, and leaves in his wake those who are shattered. Yet beneath this facade, a cosmic law operates. The narcissist cannot escape his own shadow. He may drain others, but he never fills himself. He is condemned to chase an illusion of wholeness that forever eludes him. The empath, though wounded, learns to transmute pain into wisdom. The narcissist, though appearing powerful, collapses under the weight of his false self. Archetypally, the narcissist is like Icarus, who soars toward the sun on wings of pride, only to fall when the wax of his illusions melts. The empath is like Persephone, descending into the underworld of suffering, yet returning with seeds of renewal. The narcissist loses because his foundation is a lie, and lies can never withstand the eternal truth of the psyche's demand for wholeness. Let us pause to look more deeply into the symbolism of this confrontation. Imagine the dream of an empath who comes to me in analysis. She dreams of a great banquet hall, filled with mirrors on every wall. A man stands at the center, dressed in gold, admired by a throng of shadowy figures. Yet when she approaches him, the mirrors begin to crack, and beneath the gold he is skeletal, with hollow eyes that consume all light. This dream reveals the truth of the narcissist's persona. He is a projection of golden perfection, a mask of radiance. But when intimacy approaches, when the empath seeks to see him as he truly is, the fragile mirror shatters and his inner emptiness is revealed. The empath feels terror, for her gift of sight makes her vulnerable to the abyss of another's shadow. Yet she also awakens to her power. To see truth is already to dissolve illusion. In contrast, the narcissist may dream of standing before a vast ocean. He thirsts, but cannot drink, for the waters recede whenever he approaches. He awakens angry, certain that others withhold from him the nourishment he deserves. What he does not understand is that the ocean is the unconscious itself, and his thirst can never be satisfied by external adoration. The ocean calls him inward, yet he fears its depth, so he rages against those who mirror back his emptiness, refusing the only cure available, the surrender of ego, the acceptance of his wounded inner child. This refusal is the narcissist's curse. He cannot see that the very empath he exploits carries the medicine for his healing. And because he cannot accept her gift without dismantling his false self, he ensures his own defeat. The empath versus the narcissist is then not merely a private struggle, but a reflection of an eternal psychic law. The false must eventually collapse, while the authentic must eventually rise. We may see this law at work in history itself. Tyrants intoxicated with power, narcissists on the scale of nations always fall, even if their fall takes decades or centuries. Those who embody authentic compassion, though often silenced or crucified, leave seeds that endure beyond death. Christ against Caesar, the prophet against the despot, the soul against the ego. This is the archetypal pattern repeated endlessly in human affairs. When I speak of the empath and the narcissist, I am also speaking of forces within each of you. Do not imagine this is only about your partner, your parent, your friend. The empath lives in your own openness to the unconscious, in your tenderness that feels too much. The narcissist lives in your own ego, in your defense against pain, in your hunger for recognition. The showdown between them is not only interpersonal but intrapsychic. The question is not only why does the narcissist lose, but also how does the narcissist in me lose? For you must confront the inner tyrant who drains your own soul, the inner voice that demands applause yet fears silence, the inner hollow man who resists descent into truth. Until you face him, you will project him outward and call him by someone else's name. This confrontation is terrifying, but it is also liberating, for when the empath within you finally confronts the narcissist within you, something extraordinary happens. The empath, wounded though she is, learns boundaries. She learns that compassion does not mean martyrdom. She learns to feel without being consumed, to give without being drained. And in this transformation, the narcissist loses his grip. The inner tyrant cannot dominate the soul that has discovered its own center. The empath rises not as a victim, but as an initiate, one who has walked through the valley of manipulation and emerged with the sword of discernment. This is why the narcissist always loses, not because the empath destroys him, but because he cannot destroy what is grounded in truth. Consider for a moment the archetype of the vampire. The vampire is the mythic embodiment of narcissistic hunger. He feeds on blood, yet is never satiated. He cannot see his reflection in the mirror, for he has no true self. He seduces, manipulates, enslaves, and spreads his curse, yet in every tale, the vampire is defeated not by brute force, but by light, by sacred symbols, by the awakening of those who see through his illusion. The empath then is like the one who carries the cross or the sunlight, who learns to expose the shadow to the radiance of awareness. The vampire cannot endure this light, for it reveals the void he desperately hides. Thus, the archetypal law asserts itself. The narcissist always loses because shadow cannot sustain itself against the light of consciousness. But beware, this light is not naive positivity. It is not the empath's attempt to love the narcissist into wholeness. That attempt is what binds her to his cycle of exploitation. The true light is ruthless awareness, the capacity to see what is without illusion. It is the light of individuation itself, the process by which the psyche integrates shadow and becomes whole. The empath must undergo this individuation, must face her own compulsion to rescue, her own shadow of pride in being the healer. Only then does she wield the true light that exposes the narcissist's emptiness. This is why the empath's journey is so essential. She is not merely a victim, but a symbol of the soul's evolution. Her sensitivity, when matured by wisdom, becomes the very force that ends the narcissist's reign. And so I tell you, do not despair if you have been entangled with a narcissist. You have entered into a great mystery. You have walked into the theater of archetypes where the soul is tested. You have faced deception, manipulation, and the draining of your very life force. But in this confrontation, you have also been initiated into the deeper truth of your own being. You are learning that your empathy is not weakness, but the seed of vision. You are learning that your pain carries meaning, that your descent into the underworld can yield treasures no narcissist can ever touch. And most of all, you are learning that the narcissist, no matter how powerful he seems, is already defeated by his own emptiness. For he who builds upon illusion builds upon sand, and when the storm of the psyche comes, the house must fall. You must understand that the showdown between empath and narcissist is not a mere accident of personal attraction, nor a cruel trick of fate that binds two mismatched souls together. It is the psyche itself drawing mirror against mirror, shadow against light, in order to force consciousness. When the empath meets the narcissist, something ancient stirs within both. It is as though the gods themselves have orchestrated a drama, summoning each actor to the stage. The empath, tender and receptive, carries the archetype of the wounded healer. The narcissist, inflated and defensive, carries the archetype of the wounded child disguised as the tyrant king. Their encounter is an alchemical fire, and through this fire, both must face what they fear most, the truth of their own unfinished selves. The empath is drawn to the narcissist because she perceives the child hidden behind the mask of grandeur. Her soul whispers, I know your pain, I can heal you. She confuses compassion with mission, mistaking the projection of her own inner child for the salvation of another. This is not weakness, it is archetypal destiny. She is compelled, as though by some unseen hand, to embrace the very one who will wound her most deeply. Yet this wound, though devastating, is also the portal through which she awakens to her own boundaries and power. The empath's gift, unrefined, leaves her vulnerable. The empath's gift, matured, makes her indestructible. The narcissist, on the other hand, is drawn to the empath because he senses her openness, her willingness to pour, her inexhaustible reservoir of attention and energy. He sees in her what he cannot produce in himself: authentic warmth, genuine light, unmanufactured compassion. And so, like the vampire, he approaches, charming, seducing, masking his hunger as love. He does not consciously choose this. He is driven by the emptiness within him, a gnawing void that never ceases. He cannot bear to look at his own abyss, so he seeks endlessly for mirrors that will reflect back to him a counterfeit wholeness. The empath becomes his mirror, and he feeds, yet the more he feeds, the emptier he becomes. This is the paradox of the narcissist. Every attempt to fill himself through others only enlarges the void within. Let us enter more deeply into this paradox. Why does the narcissist always lose, even when he seems victorious? The answer lies in the nature of illusion itself. To live by deception is to build a house on quicksand. No matter how splendid the palace, no matter how glittering the facade, the foundation collapses under the weight of reality. The narcissist's very existence depends upon denial, denial of his pain, denial of his dependence, denial of his shadow. But the unconscious does not forget. It waits, patient and relentless, until the mask cracks. And when it cracks, the narcissist is confronted not with triumph, but with the terrifying abyss of his own truth. His loss is inevitable because the psyche cannot be fooled forever. What is denied will return, and when it does, it demands a price greater than he can pay. The empath, in contrast, suffers terribly, but gains. She gives too much, she bends until she nearly breaks. She feels drained, discarded, invisible. Yet in this descent, she encounters her own shadow, the compulsion to heal others while neglecting herself, the pride hidden beneath her martyrdom, the fear of abandonment that drives her to overgive. When she sees this shadow, she awakens. She learns the sacred truth that compassion without boundaries is self-betrayal. She discovers that to feel deeply does not require her to bleed endlessly. She finds her voice, her discernment, her center, and in that awakening, she becomes whole. The narcissist loses because he resists the shadow. The empath wins because she learns to integrate it. I once spoke of dreams in which the narcissist stands before the ocean but cannot drink. Let me offer another dream, one that has haunted many sensitive souls. The dreamer, often an empath, finds herself wandering in a labyrinth. At the center is a beautiful fountain glowing with crystalline light. She approaches to drink, but a figure in a mask bars her way. The figure demands that she surrender her light in exchange for access to the fountain. In the dream, she often complies, giving away her very essence in the hope of reaching the water. Yet when she drinks, the fountain turns to dust and the figure laughs. This is the archetypal drama. The empath bargains with her essence, believing that if she gives enough, she will find nourishment. But the bargain is a deception. The fountain of life cannot be reached by self-betrayal. Only when she refuses to surrender her essence does the labyrinth dissolve, and the fountain reveals itself as her own heart. The narcissist cannot understand this mystery. He believes the fountain lies outside himself, in the eyes of the empath, in the applause of the crowd, in the mirrors of adoration. He cannot accept that the true source is within. To turn inward would mean facing the terror of emptiness, the grief of a childhood wound, never healed. So he rages outward, grasping for mirrors, until eventually all mirrors shatter. He is left alone, condemned to the desert of his own making. This is why he loses, not because the empath destroys him, but because he destroys himself. His refusal to turn inward becomes his undoing. The psyche demands wholeness. He insists on fragmentation. No one can defy this law forever. And yet, do not imagine that the empath's victory is one of triumphalism. It is not the victory of conquest, but of transformation. To win is not to defeat the narcissist, but to transcend him. The empath's task is not to punish, but to awaken. Her true liberation comes not when the narcissist falls, but when she ceases to play the role of his mirror, when she withdraws her energy, when she says, "No more," when she claims her own essence as sacred. The dynamic collapses. Without a mirror, the narcissist is left to face himself. Without the empath's light, his illusions cannot endure. Thus, the empath's awakening is the narcissist's downfall. This is why he always loses, because his power is borrowed. And when the lender awakens, the debt is called in. Let us look at this through the language of alchemy. The empath and the narcissist are two elements brought together in the crucible of relationship. The fire burns hot, consuming illusion, melting defenses, reducing both to raw essence. The narcissist resists the fire, clinging to form, to mask, to ego. In resisting, he cracks. The empath, though wounded, surrenders to the fire, and in surrender, she transforms. Lead turns to gold, but only for the one who accepts dissolution. The narcissist refuses dissolution, and so he remains lead, heavy, dense, bound. The empath, embracing the fire, emerges golden, purified, awakened. Alchemy reveals the eternal law. Transformation belongs to those who surrender to the process. Resistance leads to ruin. Acceptance leads to wholeness. This battle is therefore not external, but internal. Each of you carries the empath and the narcissist within. The empath within longs to feel, to connect, to heal. The narcissist within longs to be admired, to be invulnerable, to be God. They wrestle in the chambers of your soul, and your task is not to kill one and exalt the other, but to reconcile them. The narcissist within must be stripped of his tyranny, Humbled before the truth of the self, the empath within must be strengthened, armed with boundaries, awakened to her power. Only then does the showdown resolve into integration. The empath wins not by erasing the narcissist, but by refusing his illusions. The narcissist loses not because he is evil, but because he refuses to learn. This is the psychic law, the cosmic justice woven into the fabric of the unconscious. I tell you again, the narcissist always loses, even if he wins applause, even if he conquers nations, even if he leaves behind monuments of stone, he loses, for he has betrayed his own soul, and no outward conquest can compensate for that inner defeat. The empath may appear to lose her heart broken, her trust shattered, her energy drained, but in truth she wins, for she discovers a wholeness no one can take from her. The narcissist ends hollow, the empath ends whole. This is the archetypal truth, as certain as day following night. To speak of the empath and the narcissist is also to speak of the polarity that lives in the depths of the human psyche. The tension between communion and control, between openness and defense, between the soul's longing to merge and the ego's terror of annihilation. Every myth, every religion, every dream has encoded in it this polarity. It is the clash between eros and thanatos, between the instinct to connect and the instinct to dominate. The empath embodies eros in its raw, vulnerable form. She reaches outward, she binds herself to others. She feels as though her heart is woven with invisible threads that stretch into every soul she touches. The narcissist embodies thanatos, disguised as pride. He seeks to conquer, to absorb, to feed upon others in order to fortify the crumbling walls of his fragile identity. Their collision is not simply personal drama. It is a psychic crucible in which the soul is tested against its own extremes. I recall the story of a patient who dreamed she was standing in the cathedral. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, painting the floor with colors of emerald and crimson. In the center, a man in regal robes proclaimed himself king. His voice boomed, his gestures grand, and the crowd bowed in worship. Yet she alone saw that his crown was paper, his throne made of cardboard, and beneath his robe he was naked and trembling. She felt pity and terror simultaneously. This dream unveils the narcissist archetype, the fragile ruler who demands worship to conceal his own nakedness. The empath in the dream sees through him, but her compassion tempts her to protect his secret. Here lies the danger. The empath becomes complicit in the illusion, a guardian of the very lie that wounds her. This is the secret pact between empath and narcissist. He says, "Mirror me, so I may believe I am whole." She replies, "I will mirror you, for I see the frightened child you hide." Yet in this pact, both lose themselves, the narcissist deeper into his illusion, the empath deeper into her martyrdom. Only when the empath breaks, the pact does transformation begin. She must say, "I will not protect your illusion. I will not feed your mask. I will no longer betray my soul to sustain your performance." This act feels like betrayal to her, but it is the true act of love. Love not for the narcissist's ego, but for truth itself. And in that moment, the narcissist begins to lose, for without his mirror, his kingdom crumbles. Why does he always lose? Because his entire strategy depends on external validation. His empire is made of reflections. When the mirrors turn away, he has nothing. He is like a moon that has mistaken itself for the sun. The empath, however, though wounded by this collapse, discovers that her light was never dependent upon another's gaze. She finds that her capacity to feel is her own possession, not a resource to be stolen. She rediscovers her center as the true source, and so the empath rises while the narcissist falls. The moon without the sun is dark. The soul without illusion shines brighter than ever. It is important to understand that the narcissist is not evil in the moralistic sense. He is tragic. His mask was built in childhood, forged in an environment where vulnerability was unsafe. He learned that to be loved, he must perform. To be safe, he must dominate. To exist, he must deny his own wound. His arrogance is compensation, his cruelty a shield. He is a child abandoned within his own psyche, screaming through the mask of a tyrant. To see this does not excuse his harm, but it explains why he's condemned to lose. For no structure built upon denial can endure. The empath, by facing pain directly, transcends. The narcissist, by denying pain, condemns himself to endless defeat. And yet, within the empath, there lurks her own shadow. Her gift of feeling easily becomes a compulsion to rescue. She mistakes her own need for significance as love for the other. Her willingness to bleed for others conceals her fear of abandonment. She believes, if I can heal you, you will never leave me. This is her hidden narcissism, the pride of the savior. In truth, her healing mission is often a mask for her terror of her own emptiness. Thus, she too must face the truth. Her empathy is not pure unless it is grounded in self-respect, until she learns to say, I am not responsible for your wholeness. She will remain ensnared in the narcissist's web. But once she claims this truth, she becomes sovereign. She learns that compassion with boundaries is power, while compassion without boundaries is self-destruction. In one vision I have often contemplated, the empath is depicted as a tree rooted deep in the earth, her branches wide, her fruit abundant. The narcissist approaches, hungry, and takes until the tree begins to wither. Yet at the core of the tree lies a secret, roots reaching down into an inexhaustible spring. When the tree remembers its source, it revives, bearing fruit again. The narcissist, however, cannot access this spring, for it requires humility, surrender, descent into the earth. He rages at the tree, demanding more, but the spring does not respond to demand. It responds only to reverence. Thus the empath, once awakened to her spring, thrives, while the narcissist starves. This is why he always loses, because he seeks outward what can only be found inward. Now, let me speak of individuation, the process by which the self becomes whole. The empath's individuation requires integration of her shadow, learning discernment, boundaries, the refusal to martyr herself. The narcissist's individuation would require humility, the dismantling of his mask, the acceptance of his wound, Few narcissists achieve this, for the descent is too terrifying. To admit, I am empty, I am afraid, I am not what I pretend, feels like death to the false self. And indeed it is a death, the death of the mask, but only through that death can resurrection occur. The empath, though shattered, often rises from her ashes. The narcissist, clinging to his mask, collapses into ruin. Thus the law of psychic truth asserts itself. The mask cannot outlast the soul. Consider again the archetype of the vampire. In countless tales, he appears invincible, strong, immortal, seductive, yet he is undone, not by brute force, but by light, by the refusal of his victim to grant consent. The vampire cannot enter uninvited. Once the invitation is withdrawn, his power falters. This is the empath's awakening. She realizes she has been inviting the vampire into her home, offering her blood willingly, mistaking exploitation for love. When she closes the door, when she claims her sacred space, the vampire perishes. He may rage, he may threaten, he may attempt to seduce anew, but without her consent he has no life. And so he always loses, for his survival depends entirely on another's surrender. Do not imagine that this battle ends when the narcissist is gone. It continues within. Each of you must ask, where do I exploit myself, draining my own essence for the sake of a false image? Where do I seduce myself with illusions, denying the wound within? Where do I betray my own soul in the name of approval? In this sense, you are both empath and narcissist. The empath within you must stop rescuing your own illusions. The narcissist within you must be dethroned, stripped of his tyranny. Only then does the true self emerge, radiant and whole. This is the ultimate showdown, not between two people, but within one soul. And in this showdown, the narcissist always loses, for he is but a mask. The empath, when awakened, is eternal. The empath and the narcissist are not merely two figures colliding in a human relationship. They are mythic forces that reveal the eternal destiny of the psyche. The false self must collapse. The true self must endure. This is the secret meaning behind the phrase, the narcissist always loses. He loses because he bets against the soul. He places all his faith in the mask, in the illusion, in the reflection of mirrors, while the soul demands reality, demands wholeness, demands the painful but redeeming descent into truth. The empath, though she may stagger, though she may suffer, invests her very existence in truth. Even when deceived, she remains tethered to authenticity, and authenticity, though crucified, always resurrects. We must remember that shadow cannot sustain itself without energy. The narcissist thrives only because he convinces others to feed him, to give their blood willingly. He survives not through strength, but through seduction. When the empath awakens and withdraws her consent, his shadow starves. It is not destruction from outside that defeats him, it is the collapse of the illusion from within. This collapse is terrifying for him, but it is also inevitable, archetypally. It is the tower card in the tarot, a false edifice struck by lightning, crumbling, because its foundation was never true. The empath becomes the lightning when she says, no more. Her refusal is illumination. and illumination always destroys falsehood. There is an old myth of the wounded king, whose kingdom lies barren because he has denied the wound in his own soul. His people starve, his rivers dry, his fields turn to dust. The healing can only occur when the king admits his wound and receives the touch of the Holy Grail. The narcissist is this wounded king who refuses the Grail. He pretends he is not wounded. He rages at those who suggest otherwise, and thus his kingdom remains a wasteland. The empath, by contrast, is the one who drinks of the Grail, who admits her wound and is transformed. This is why she rises while he falls. The Grail is truth, and only those who humble themselves to drink of it can be made whole. Do not be deceived by appearances. The narcissist may strut with pride, wield power, command attention, even enslave others with his charisma. But all of this is the dance of a mask. Inside, he is terrified of silence. He cannot sit alone without distraction. For in the silence, the truth approaches like a shadow he cannot escape. The empath, though she trembles in the darkness, learns to endure silence. She learns to sit with grief, to face her own shadow, to integrate her pain. And this endurance makes her indestructible. He avoids, she endures, he denies, she accepts. And so, though he appears mighty, he is fragile. Though she appears fragile, she becomes mighty. Imagine again the dream of mirrors. The narcissist stands surrounded by countless reflections, each one showing him as perfect, radiant, adored. He smiles, believing himself immortal, but one by one, the mirrors crack. The empath, once complicit, now turns her gaze inward, refusing to reflect his falsehood. The mirrors shatter into dust, and he sees for the first time the emptiness he has fled his whole life. This moment is the true loss, not the loss of possessions or followers or lovers, but the loss of the illusion that sustained him. The narcissist always loses, because no illusion can withstand eternity. The soul waits patiently for truth, and in the end, the soul always wins. But let me speak directly to those of you who carry the empath's wound. You have felt drained, deceived, abandoned. You have given everything to someone who could not receive it, who demanded endlessly, who left you hollow. You have wondered, was it all in vain? I tell you, no. It was initiation. You have walked through fire, and though your skin bears scars, your spirit bears gold. You have learned what no book can teach, that your essence is sacred, that no one may consume it without your consent. You have discovered boundaries carved in the fire of betrayal, and these boundaries will serve you for the rest of your life. Your suffering has awakened wisdom. That is the empath's victory. You may ask, but what of the narcissist? Can he never be healed? I do not say never. There are those rare moments when the mask collapses entirely, when the narcissist falls to his knees, when the child within is revealed at last. If in that moment he surrenders, if he embraces the wound, if he accepts the humility of being human, then transformation is possible. But this requires a death he fears most, the death of his false self. Few choose it. Many rage until the end, clinging to their illusions. Yet the possibility remains for, even in the darkest soul, the archetype of wholeness waits. But make no mistake, until that surrender, the narcissist is condemned to lose. He loses not because others defeat him, but because he betrays himself. This is why the empath must release the compulsion to rescue him. It is not her task to save what refuses to be saved. Her task is to save herself, to claim her soul, to embody truth. By doing so, she not only liberates herself, but also offers the narcissist the only chance he has for awakening, the chance to face himself without her mirror. If he awakens, it will not be because she saved him, but because he finally allowed the mask to die. If he refuses, then his downfall is his own making. Either way, the empath is free. In the end, the empath versus the narcissist is the story of the soul versus illusion. The empath's path is painful but redemptive. She is initiated into wholeness through fire. The narcissist path is grandiose but self-defeating. He is consumed by the very illusions he worships. This is why, in the archetypal sense, the empath always rises and the narcissist always falls. For life itself is on the side of truth, and truth is the empath's ally. The false cannot prevail against the eternal. So, if you find yourself asking why you were chosen for this battle, why you encountered the narcissist in your life, I tell you, because your soul was ready to awaken, ready to learn boundaries, ready to transmute pain into wisdom. The narcissist was the initiator, the shadow guide who forced you into the underworld, but you, like Persephone, return with seeds of renewal. He, like Icarus, falls by his own pride. This is the law of the psyche, written in every myth, enacted in every soul. The empath endures, the narcissist collapses. The empath integrates, the narcissist fragments. The empath walks into wholeness, the narcissist into ruin. And so I leave you with this truth. Do not envy the narcissist's mask, for it is already cracking. Do not despise your own wound, for it is already healing. Do not fear the showdown, for it has already been decided. The narcissist always loses because he fights against truth, and no one can win that battle. You always win when you choose authenticity. When you face your shadow, when you claim your soul, the path may be dark, but it leads to light, and the light, once awakened in you, can never again be stolen.